Hello again, everyone. We just finished recreating the Hans Rosling Gapminder visualization, where the data points changed based on average income and life expectancy. But if you remember, we had to connect to multiple data sources. So we really still have 4 separate tables. In this video, we're going to learn how to combine data, which is going to be a very useful strategy, but we're going to be using it. We're going to do this using a new tool, which is called Tableau Prep Builder. So this is the other software that we downloaded when we downloaded Tableau Desktop. When I open this, it looks something like this. So the first thing that we need to do is connect to our data. So we know Tableau Prep is a way to work with, kind of visualize the mapping of manipulating, joining, editing, cleaning our data. This is what we're going to do with the Gapminder data. So I'm going to load in the 4 data sets that we have. And what that does is creates a flow. So a flow is just a canvas where we are working with our data. And then when we run the flow at the end of it, that will produce all the data manipulations that we need into a single file that we can then upload into Tableau. So we know the setup of the data already, but we also get a preview of it. And Tableau Prep also has the first line contains header information option for us, just like in the original data. So our first line for these data sets is going to be the header information. So let's go ahead and change those on all of these. So I'm just clicking on the data sets, bringing up the preview, and bringing that first row up to the top of the headers, just like we did in Tableau. The next thing that we're going to do is pivot the data. So if you remember, we had to convert the years that were across the columns into one indicator column with a value for either the population, the life expectancy, or the income. We want to do the same exact thing here. So the first thing that we're going to do is add a pivot. So the way I can do that is by clicking the plus sign and then pivot. So let's rename our columns. So we have country, and then the way we're going to pivot is by highlighting the 1800, and then I'm going to scroll all the way to the right. It might take a little while to get to 2018. I'm going to click Shift and then click 2018. That should highlight all of them. And then I can just drag into the pivot. And there we get what we want. So now we have an indicator column for year, and we have the column for income per person. Click enter on that. And now we have that same reshaped data that we did in Tableau, just now in Tableau Prep. One thing that we can do is name each of our steps. So here we pivoted to now long data. So long, tall data, same thing as opposed to wide data. When the columns are spread across, now there is repeat observations for each year. So that is long data. So let's go ahead and repeat this process for the life expectancy data. So I'm going to right click, actually just click, add a pivot. We can rename this to country again, and then click the 1800, scroll all the way over. Hold down Shift, click the 2018, drag to the columns that I'm pivoting. Now I have year again. Let's change that name. And I also have now the life expectancy. So before we pivot the last one, let's go ahead and do the first join step. So what I'm doing is taking the pivoted life expectancy, and I'm going to add in that into the income data. So right now I have year, income, and country. I just want to append. I'm going to join based on country and year, and I'm going to add in that life expectancy data. So the way I can do that is I'm not going to drag this one. So if I drag this here and click join, that's going to be dragging the original one. That's not what I want. I want the pivoted data. So let's go ahead and right click and remove that. We can move this back to its original spot. So I want to drag the pivot now. Let's go ahead and rename our step actually. So this is again our pivot long. We are joining the pivot longs together like that. So this will be join one. That's fine. So the way this works is we can change how the join functions, either a left join, inner join, or right join. Let's not worry too much about that right now, but we do want to change the applied join calls. So this is how the data is joined. There is kind of two unique keys. So we have not only country, but they're also being joined by year. So we want to match up year and year. So now Afghanistan 1800 is getting mapped to Afghanistan 1800. And that is exactly what we want. Next thing that we can do though is notice that we now have 2 year columns. We have year 1 and then the original year. We have country 1 and we have the original country. So it's bringing in both sides of the data. Way around that is to do a clean step. So we now want to remove the duplicate columns. So what I can do is add a clean step, and I don't need year 1 anymore, right? That's just a repeat one. So let's go ahead and remove that field. And we can do the same thing on country 1. So remove field. So now if I look at my data, I have country, I have year, I have income per person, and I have life expectancy. And it also shows us a cool little histogram of the data. So let's go ahead and rename our step. So what we did was remove dupe columns. So then we want to do the same process with the population data, but first we need to pivot it. So let's go ahead and add a pivot. So we'll rename this to country. And then do the same process to pivot. Right click on, or just click on 2018 after holding shift down and then drag to the pivot. And now we can change this to year. Again, we're going to be removing this anyways, but let's go ahead and just be consistent with how we've done this. And then this one is population. So now that we've pivoted long again, let's go ahead and join this to the cleaned data in the same manner. So right now, Afghanistan is being mapped to Afghanistan, but there might be some issues because it's not accounting for the years as well. So what we want to do is add in the applied join clause, and we're going to map year to year. Now it's mapping year and the country together as we would like. So then again, we can add another clean to remove the duplicate columns. So I don't need year 1, so let's remove that. And we don't need country 1. So let's go ahead and remove that. If we take a look what we have now, we have the population information, we have the life expectancy, we have the year, income, and country. It's exactly what we need. Remove dupe columns. The last thing that we need to do is take a look at the countries. So we want to add in the region information. But remember, we only want a few of the columns. So let's go ahead and add a clean step and get rid of all of the ones that we don't need. So we want country. We can keep the country ID just like we did in the first video. We don't need alpha 3. We can remove that. We don't need country code. Remove that. The only one we want to keep is region. We can just capitalize it, be consistent, and we will get rid of the rest of them. Okay, so let's rename our step. So removed needed columns. So now let's join this to the end of our flow that we have here. So I'm going to drag this all the way over, and we're going to join. So notice there's going to be the red ones that are here that are mismatched. So this just means that there is no region information for Aruba, or there is no country, there is no life expectancy information for Aruba or Antarctica, even though that is in the region data set. So the way that we are going to account for this is by actually keeping only the left columns. So a left join, it takes whatever's on the left. So in this case, this was all of our numerical information. So we have the year, the country, the income, life expectancy, population. We want to keep that entire data set. The only thing that we're doing is adding in the region based on whatever country we have. So what we want to do is left join, meaning I'm going to keep every single row in here and just add the rows where there is a match from the country's data. In the previous joins, it was keeping both matches, meaning that there had to be a Afghanistan 1800 in the left one and an Afghanistan 1800 in the right one in order for those to combine and bring that information in. Now we're just keeping the left and adding in only the information on the right when there is a match. By keeping the information, I mean keeping all of the rows. So this final join is when we add in the region. The first join was combine income and life. Next one was add population. And then we added, yes, we can be consistent. We can add, actually, I like it. So combine income and life expectancy. Then we added the population, and then we finally added the regions. And if we look now, our final data, we can actually preview it in Tableau. If we click on that, actually, if we right click and then preview in Tableau desktop, it'll take a moment, but it should open up a new Tableau worksheet where we can see the data that we have now created. So we have population, life expectancy, year, income per person. We have country 1, so we need to remove that. But then we have everything else that we need. And this is exactly set up as we thought. So next, let's add a clean step to remove that last duplicate information, country 1. Columns. And this is our final flow. So what we can do now is save the flow. So we'll save this as join Gapminder data. So that way I can come back to it if I need to. And we can also add in the output step. So output now is going to save the final result into a hyper file, which is just a Tableau ready-made data set. So I'm going to save the file. I'll find the location. I'll call this joined Gapminder data. And I'll put this in my documents, accept that. Now, when I run the flow, and then I go to my documents, I have, in a moment, it should pop up. And here it is, the joined Gapminder data. I had to double check where it was being saved. So make sure that the location is where you expect it. And that is going to be our combined data. So now let's open up a new Tableau worksheet. We're going to real quick recreate this and then add some reference lines so that we can track the average values over time in addition to each country. So now when I open, I can go to documents, and I can open the hyperfile, and I have the data that we created using Tableau Prep Builder. And it is all in one data source now. So let's real quick recreate that visual. So we have income in the columns, life expectancy in the rows, changed as average. And it's just easier to work with data when it's all in one source. So that was the whole reason that we did the joining and the merging process. Next up, we have country in the detail, and we have population as the size, edited the size. Then we had a region as the color, and finally year in the pages. And then we can hide the indicator. So there are some null values, exclude. And the last thing that we did was edit the axes. $130,000. And here is the visual that we ended up with. Super easy to recreate now that we know the steps. Let's just change the title real quick. Okay, so now what we're going to do is add in a reference line. So to do that, let's go to Analytics, Reference Line, and we're going to start with keeping it on the table. Eventually, we need to do the pane, but I'll show you why. So the table is going to be where we put the reference line. The label, we're going to change it to custom. So this is for average income. So we're going to do average income per person. And this is in dollars. And then if you click the right arrow and then the value, this is going to add in the actual value of that average income. So right now, the average income, if I change throughout the years, it's not changing, right? It's taking the average income overall for every single country for every single year all together. So what we need to do is change our reference line to edit. We want it to be per pane instead. Now, when I change throughout the years, my average income reference line changes as well. So that just adds some more information. We can also change the formatting of it. So rather than a horizontal line, we can, sorry, a full line, we can get a dotted or a dashed line. We'll go with dashed. And we can also change where the text shows up. So the alignment, I'll make it on the right, and I'll make it at the top of the plot. So let's do the same thing now for our y-axis. So we will add a reference line. We can just put it in the per pane for the life expectancy. And we're going to have the custom label. So life expectancy. And then the value. And this is in years. So we'll add the units on there. Line, we'll make it dashed. Okay. And then let's change the format of this one as well, so that the alignment is on the right and above the line. Now, when I play the visual, the average income and the average life expectancy are changing right along with the data values. So a neat, easy feature to add in with Tableau with just simple reference lines and still taking advantage of the animations using pages. And we did all of this from Tableau Prep Builder. The reason we're introducing Tableau Prep Builder is to just show you another tool that is possible, right? This kind of visual of the data cleaning process is super nice. It's very helpful in understanding where your data comes from when you did what step. In the next module, when we learn about R, we'll do this same exercise, but we're going to do it programmatically. So we'll be running commands to do the same joining, to do the same data cleaning steps. But this is a very great introduction to show you what is possible and hopefully something that you can take advantage of and use later in your career now that you know that it exists. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.